You are listening to the Open Mic Night Podcast with Mike Weger and Colin Ball. OMN is supported by listeners like you. To become a patron and support OMN, head over to patreon.com/OMN Podcast. Again, patreon.com/OMN Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to another week of Open Mic Night. Open Mic Night is a 2980 network production. This week, it's all about Apple news, and we got a ton of it. Super pumped. We got a lot of feature updates for the iPhone. We've got some rumor news, and of course, those Q3 earnings from Apple. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Alrighty, so like I said, welcome back to another week of Open Mic Night. Very glad that you guys are joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. My name is Mike Weger, and I am your host. And this is the Open Mic Night Podcast, where we cover everything Apple. We give you guys Apple news, tips, tricks, product updates, anything you guys can possibly think of for Apple. That is what we give you here. And like I said earlier, this is a 2980 network production. You can find Open Mic Night and another podcast that I do over at 2980network.com. This show is also part of the Geeks Network, and you can find other technology-related awesome podcasts over at thegeeksnetwork.com. Now, joining me this week, as always, Mr. Colin Ball. How's it going, Colin? It's been a good week, for me at least. How about for you?
I mean, it's
just another week.
It's been an all right week because I'm moving this weekend, and I don't want to.
Big changes in Colin's life. He's moving. I'll be helping you move. Yeah, it'll be a good weekend. So you're just spending that. You're doing that dreaded week before, though. The dreaded week before of putting things in the boxes, maybe organizing some things, or at least attempting to. No.
Well, I mean, the nice thing is that with my OCD, like everything's already kind of organized, so I know where things are. But it's the fact that I have to like doing the dishes. Like, why do I have to wrap them in newspaper? Why is that a safety feature?
You know, you might not have to. If you just stuck to plastic, you'd be totally fine. That was my mantra before I got married. And then apparently you need really nice stuff, and yeah.
I like glassware.
Okay.
I like putting my beer in nice glasses.
There we go. That's true. The glassware is key. That is definitely a key thing to have. So this week, like I said, we have a lot of great news coming from the Apple front. I also have a pick of the week later, and Colin and I are going to go over a tip of the week, something that we think you guys should be doing on a more often basis, something that Colin does way more than me, but we will get to that later in the show. First of all, I want to thank WLMN Radio, everyone over there, Roger. They are fantastic. They've been helping me since the very beginning, since Open Mic Night started. So a big thank you to them, WLMNradio.com. You can find them and listen to music and tech talk and stuff like that. So definitely go on over. We have a lot of fun stuff planned for Roger over at WLMN Radio. Can't wait to talk about that more as the year progresses and we get into the new year. So the news, though, we are just going to we're just going to jump right into this news. And first, actually, thank you to everyone who's out live in the chat room. PTD, Brian, a lot of them are always out here every week. I want to thank them. I love having them in the chat. They offer a lot to the show. And if you guys are listening to this after the fact, if you guys are watching this on YouTube or listening on your podcast app, come out Tuesday nights, 7 p.m. Central Time. That's 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern. Over at 2980network.com/live. You guys can watch the video live there as well as chat with us live during the show. So that's always fun stuff to do. But getting into the news. This is something that I wanted to talk about because I was super, super pumped about it. I got a text message over the weekend. I was actually out of town this past weekend, so I wasn't able to activate it right away. But I got a text message from my carrier, and I use Sprint, that Wi-Fi calling is now available on my iPhone. Now, obviously, Wi-Fi calling is something that had been announced for the iPhone a long time ago. We learned about this with iOS 8, so it was announced almost a full year ago. Sprint is just now getting around to releasing it. Sprint is kind of one of the laggers in this whole thing, but also Verizon. Verizon has not done this either, I don't believe. Maybe they have, but I don't believe they have. Colin, you don't think so either?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So, Sprint, the Wi-Fi calling is a feature on your phone that allows you to make calls and receive calls when you are connected to your Wi-Fi network. So pretty much if you are in a building like my apartment or my work office place where the building kind of blocks the signal, you don't get very good signal, you can now use your Wi-Fi signal to make and place calls. Kind of interesting. Now, Colin, you said you don't have this right now because of the fact that you are on the old iPhone, right?
Yeah, I have the iPhone 5.
Okay, so actually not even that old. That's only 2 iterations ago, but they
Yeah.
have not released that feature yet. And you're not on Sprint though.
No, I'm on T-Mobile.
Okay, and T-Mobile has been one of the ones they've been out there saying like they were one of the first ones to adopt that because didn't you have this at one point before you had the iPhone?
No, T-Mobile came out right before iOS 8
Okay.
had been released, saying that we will have Wi-Fi calling. And then when iOS came out, I was really excited, like, oh, I have Wi-Fi calling. And then I realized in every chat room there was like, yeah, it's not going to be on the 5. It's only on the 5S and the 5C.
Well, okay then. Definitely not going to be able to use that. But okay,
Yeah.
but this is big for people like you and me because we are on two of the lowest end networks you can get as far as coverage goes. Now, when you
Yeah.
have coverage, they're fantastic. They're great. The speeds are fantastic and they're good, but finding coverage is the hard part. Now, Sprint in our area where you and I live is a little bit better. Actually, in Omaha, Sprint is pretty good. I can get a service pretty much anywhere except for inside my law school building, but that thing's like a metal or like concrete bunker, so it doesn't surprise me that I don't get service there. But it's important for Sprint and T-Mobile to have this Wi-Fi calling because it pretty much allows them to spend a lot less money on network upgrades and for customers to still be happy because they get a great signal. They can make calls, place calls when they're on their Wi-Fi network. And let's face it, I mean, most of us have Wi-Fi everywhere we're going now. I don't know about you, Colin, but like I'm at home, I got Wi-Fi. I go to work, I have Wi-Fi. I go to school, I have Wi-Fi. Okay, besides that, I'm outside where I have good coverage anyway, so I should be pretty good no matter where I go, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So a few things that came along with this though, and this is strictly for Sprint and for iPhones. Now, there are surprisingly, I was surprised to find that there are differences between the Sprint Wi-Fi calling on Android and on iOS. So just a few things I wanted to mention was that international calls from US to other countries, they list a few countries, is also free. And, well, I shouldn't say free. It's included. It doesn't rack up the international charges that you would normally do when you're using Wi-Fi calling. Also, when you are traveling internationally. So in a few months, I'm going out of the country. If I place calls back to the United States, anything that I'm placing back to the United States on the Wi-Fi calling also does not incur international rates, which this is a huge thing for me because I don't want to pay those high rates. However, most resorts, most hotels will have Wi-Fi, so you can at least place and receive calls when you need to, when it's important, and to have that availability is pretty nice. Now, the few tweets I saw going around from people was like, oh my gosh, Sprint just released Wi-Fi calling. I'm never paying another dime for my phone bill. I was like, you still have to pay for your service. So let's just clarify, just because you have Wi-Fi calling, you have to pay Sprint to have that service turned on to your phone. So I think there's a little bit of a misconception out there that Wi-Fi calling just meant all of a sudden that if you had a Sprint phone that your stuff was going to be free. No, you're still going to pay for your Sprint plan. Otherwise, you won't get that service to your phone. And also no text messaging. So when you are doing this sort of Wi-Fi stuff, as of now, the iPhone does not support it. Android does. The iPhone, you cannot send and receive text messages on Wi-Fi. Now, obviously, most iPhone users are using iMessage anyway. So if you're using iMessage to another user of an Apple product, then you are fine. That sends just fine over Wi-Fi. It always has. But obviously, a text message will not send on an iPhone yet. That may be coming with Sprint. And also, like Colin mentioned, this is for the 5S and C, that line, those came out at the same time for those and above. So just the last 2 iterations of the iPhone that is going to be available on. But something I was excited for, I've already tested it, I've used it, I use it at home, I used it at work, I placed a call on it at work, and it was crystal clear, to the point where it's almost as good as a FaceTime audio call. I don't know if you guys have used FaceTime audio, but those things are almost creepily clear, like they're like in your ear, kind of weird. So yeah, good stuff coming from Sprint and T-Mobile, but mainly the Sprint one was the one that just released today, or this past week. So, all right, going into the next piece of news. Colin, Apple released their Q3 numbers, which is always exciting because we get to hear everyone kind of complain or praise or argue on both sides. No matter what the numbers are, there's going to be people on both sides, which is always entertaining to me. So do you want to go through kind of their general numbers, and then we can talk about them?
Sure. So total revenue for the third quarter, this number is insane.
Yeah.
49.6 billion with a B. Their net profit for same quarter, $10.7 billion. Didn't meet the expectations, but at this point they have now $202.8 billion in cash on hand.
Yeah, which is insane. I mean, this is the first time they've been over 200, and that is a number that almost just scares me. Like, what do you do with that much money when you have that in cash on hand? So,
Yeah.
oh man, I mean, it's just crazy. So when they say cash on hand, that is cash and marketable securities. So things that they could pretty much turn into cash whenever they wanted to. So that is what they're talking about with cash. That's just a huge number. So the big point here, though, was okay. So we had $49.6 billion in revenue. Did not meet analysts' expectations. Now, analysts have been known to kind of hype up Apple. They kind of challenge them a little bit, give them higher expectations than they plan to. Their expectations were at $50 billion, so they didn't come in very far off. $400,000, or sorry, $400 million.
400 million.
Yes, let's do math correctly. $400 million is the difference there between what they came in with and what the expectations were. Now, the next big part was if you break down the numbers, and we're not going to go into all the numbers because they did break out iPhone, iPad sales, Mac sales, and they did tell us those certain numbers. Now, iPhone sales did have a little bit of a drop, and that is what analysts are predicting caused the drop in the Apple stock. Now, anytime you don't meet analyst expectations and you also have a number of your flagship product dropping, you are going to see a big dip in the stock, and we definitely did see that, so it wasn't surprising. One of the surprising numbers, though, was that international sales made up 94% of the revenue, meaning that if you just take out United States, you pretty much lose all that. Or if you had just had it in the United States, you pretty much lose all that. So areas like China, India, developing countries like that where there's a lot of population, those numbers are just skyrocketing. 94% of that $49.6 billion did come from international markets. Colin, does that surprise you at all? Or, I mean, is this something that we saw Apple needed to do? They needed to kind of focus on those international markets.
I mean, at first it's kind of surprising, but then remembering back that there had been stories coming out that Apple had finally started kind of taking over Samsung in specifically Asian countries such as China, Japan, and India, Thailand, all of those, where I think Thailand's South or not. It's South.
I'm
Pacific,
bad at geography too. That's why I didn't go there.
Anyways, but whatever. So with those countries, Apple finally was able to kind of overtake the market, and because of that, I think a big reason for that was the bigger screens on the 6 and 6 Plus. To me, like when I first saw the number, I was like, wait, what? 94%? And then in the US, it was iPhones. Did they have a new iPad this past year? Was it the iPad Air?
Yeah, well, the Air 2, I believe.
The Air 2. So they had that, and then the Apple Watch, which everyone's been saying, as we've talked about, and kind of beating the dead horse, where people are saying it's a flop when it's not a flop, and whatever else, like first generation kind of thing.
Right.
But I would have expected the number out of the U.S. or at least North America and maybe South America to be a little bit higher.
That was my thing, was that I'm not surprised that the other areas are growing. Obviously, they're newer areas. As you find more market there, your numbers are going to go up. But my shock was that United States only made up 6%. So I just thought America would have been higher on that list. But when you think of just sheer numbers, how many people are in those countries, obviously, if those are starting to boom, they are going to dwarf the United States. I didn't think it would be dwarfing it that much. All right, so those are the numbers. Take them or leave them. That is what they were. Apple stock did drop a little bit. We'll see where they come in. As of right now, I can tell you that on the closing bell, or I don't know if my app does closing bell or just after, but Apple stock is at 123.38 today. They saw a little bit of a drop this week. It wasn't honestly too much. They were up at around 127, and they've been dropping since. So now they went from 127. Now they're down to 123.38. So that is where the Apple stock stands right now, and those were their numbers. All right, so next thing we are going to talk about again is something that we have to talk about each week. Apparently we cannot have an Apple show without talking about Apple Music. And the latest news is that they have registered 10 million users. So why is this number significant? Well, if you look at their biggest competitor, Spotify has about 20 million paid subscribers. And, And Spotify has already been out for a long time having that paid option, and Apple Pay just released, and they're already at half of that number. However, we've got to remember, I think a lot of people reading these articles are forgetting that as of right now, customers aren't paying. It's a very simple sign-up process. Just click sign up. Sure, I'm not going to be charged for another 3 months. Sign me up. So I think this number will shrink a little bit as we get towards the end of the 3-month trial period. You start to look at times around September, October, when people start to expire on their free trials and not sign up for the $10 a month, which as of now, I will admit, I think that's where I'm going to be. I don't think I'm going to keep it past the 3 months. We will see if I start to use it any more beyond this, but that's about where I'm at. So yeah, they're at that half mark, but are they really? I don't think so. Colin, have you used Apple Music anymore since we've talked about it? It hasn't been intriguing to you, huh?
I mean, I signed up for it. I know we said we were going to listen to it, but I opened it one day and I was like, nope.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And the reason is because I'm not willing to put in the work to recreate my playlist, to go download songs again. I have it all on Spotify. I'm just not willing to go do that work. Now, if there was like an import feature from Spotify, that was where Apple could kill the market.
Yeah.
If it was like, oh, hey, do you want all your stuff that you already have on those other services? Yeah, sure, here you go. That would be a killer in the market. But yeah, I don't think it's a big number right now. I'm not excited to see that. I think, honestly, it should be more. For a free trial in your Apple, I thought it should be a lot higher of a number. I think you should already be at where Spotify's at. Is that too high of an expectation?
I don't think so, because now people's music, like how you used to be able to get to your music, is now built into iTunes Music or Apple Music.
Right.
So you have to, I don't guess you don't have to sign up for it, but every day you're going to see it if all you use is just your iTunes library.
Right.
I guess the other thing, though, I keep seeing every week it's another story of someone being like, I can't stand Apple Music, and I love reading those. And this last week there was one, I can't remember the name of the guy. I had sent it to you. I'm going to find that really quickly, but it's a pretty well-known and kind of vocal Apple supporter who last week came out in complete I guess disgust is the wrong word, but just disdain almost to the idea of Apple Music because it had destroyed his entire iTunes catalog.
And was that because he had iTunes Match on as well? Was that the same article? Is that why it destroyed it?
Is that what it said? Is that he had iTunes Match on?
I don't know if we're talking about the same one, but I know that if you had both iTunes Match and Apple Music on, that it was causing some sort of disturbance with your library. It could have. It didn't on mine, but it could have had that effect on some people.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's what it was. I can't find it right now, so I'm not going to even worry about it. But I think the big thing is that in one aspect he said that he uploaded the CD, like put a CD onto his computer, put it in iTunes, like had fixed the problem that the iTunes Music or Apple Music had caused, went to bed, woke up the next day, went into his library to listen to that, and it had just completely ruined what he had done. It reverted all of his changes.
Really?
Yeah.
So the syncing is not working as well as they would hope.
Yeah.
Well, and they've been running into problems like this. There have been a lot of reports lately, too, that the connectivity to Apple Music is going down. You'll be listening to something, all of a sudden you'll just start skipping through songs. I don't know if that's an Apple Music fault or if that's just an iTunes in general fault, because I've had that in the past where I've been listening to a song on the iPod, which I don't use very often, but the times I was, and it would just start skipping through, not playing songs, and then like just randomly stop on a song and play it. Like there's been a lot of reports of that happening now with Apple Music as well. So not sure if they're still working out the kinks or anything like that, but there is still a market, and someone like my mom, who has been purchasing iTunes Music since iTunes came out. She purchases still hard CDs too. She purchases those sometimes when she wants them, but mainly she just purchases music through iTunes. And this is just a logical thing that she might try out. So those sort of people who have not moved on to anything else, like you said, those are the people that are probably going to stick with this in the future if anyone else does. But I just don't see the benefit in the catalog, number one. There's still not that big of a difference for me in the iTunes catalog compared to Spotify for me to switch. Now, maybe in the future there might be, but I'm willing to give up a few artists here and there to stick with a service that I've already tailored to me. And I just think Apple is too late to the game with some of us users who have already created those platforms and built our whole music library on them. I don't know. That's just my thought. Okay, so the next story has something to do kind of with music. We're still going to be staying on the music path, and that is that T-Mobile is adding Apple Music to their Music Freedom, feature. I don't know if you call it a plan or a feature, but it's more of their Music Freedom feature is a service that says, hey, we on the popular music applications, and they're adding Apple Music to this, that is not going to go against your data limit. So if you have a plan that has a data limit, let's say a 2 gig limit, and you're worried that streaming all the Apple Music is going to eat into that, T-Mobile says no, they're wrapping into their Music Freedom. It was the number one request to T-Mobile in the past few weeks, and the CEO came out and said, yes, that makes sense. Spotify, Pandora, and some of the other ones were already under this program, so it just made sense that they would add Apple, but kind of a nice little feature. You know, I'm jealous sometimes that you have T-Mobile because they're doing a lot of these things that are very innovative. They're wanting to be out on that front edge, and although the service isn't that great, they're doing a lot of really cool things.
Yeah, I mean, they love the whole kind of I always say his name wrong. I'm pretty sure it's Ledger, but it's spelled not like Ledger. He's very eccentric, might be the right word. I'm not entirely sure, but he's very out where he's not afraid to just talk down to every other competitor that's out there, even though that competitor might be doing better. So with the whole data, like this not affecting your data, I've always liked that because I listen to Spotify from when I leave my apartment till I get to work, and in the interim, it's using data, or would be. So it's a nice little thing where I don't ever have to worry about that.
Right, just that peace of mind sort of thing. That's because the one thing that is keeping me on Sprint, keeping me from switching away, is the fact that they have unlimited data. So I don't have to worry. I can stream as much college basketball during the March Madness as I want. I can stream as much as I want, and I am totally fine. Don't have to worry about anything. And that is what's keeping me on Sprint. You know, I think these companies know what is keeping their customers there, and they're going to hold on to that. That's what they're sticking to, because Sprint is still sticking to the unlimited data thing. They're not going into data limits. Now, it's kind of nice. I do get the best of both worlds because I have Sprint, I have unlimited data. I can stream whenever I do have service, and when oftentimes I don't have Sprint service because I'm out somewhere where they don't offer it, my wife has Verizon, so we have her phone to use whenever we don't have Sprint. So I kind of get the best of both worlds, but she is also on a data cap, so we don't use her phone ever for streaming or anything like that. Anytime we're doing that sort of stuff, we are going to use my phone on Sprint. So, yeah, kind of a nice little addition from T-Mobile there to help people out. So, okay, speaking of cell providers, in the chat room, is it PTD says that he uses a company called Republic Wireless. Now, honestly, I've never heard of them, so they must not be around Omaha or Kansas City, the two markets that I've lived in. Colin, have you heard of them at all? No? Okay. So Republic Wireless, he pays $17 a month for his service, which is pretty fantastic. And but Republic actually runs on the Sprint network. So, there's all these sort of smaller companies like Cricket and all these, Boost Mobile, those sort of things that run on these other networks. So apparently Republic was one of them, and he pays $17. So I don't think you could beat that for a phone service. That's pretty good. So moving on, we are getting into the rumor mill. So going back to, obviously, we love talking about the iPhone 6s and 6 Plus S and what those all will entail. So there's a few things we want from this and a few things that I think we're actually going to get. So first thing, of course, is the A9 chip. A9 chip, they do this every year. They iterate, they make the chips better, faster, more power efficient, energy efficient, and the A9 chip is going to do all of that. Now, it's kind of been known that Samsung might be actually one of the largest producers of the A9 chip. Now, I don't know about you, Colin, but this always has intrigued me that these companies are all, making stuff for each other. And I guess not as much Apple for other people, but like Samsung, one of their biggest phone competitors, also provides their chips. Now, I don't know if I'm Samsung, I might inject a little something into their chips that make them run just a little wonky because we're the biggest competitor. Now, I know you can't do that, but it just always intrigues me that these companies are, in lawsuits together and everything like that. But okay, we're still going to use Samsung as our biggest supplier for chips.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way as you, where sometimes it's like, what are you doing? But at the same time, it's kind of, Apple understands that they don't even make a chip, I don't think.
No.
So the fact that they don't make any kind of processor in that fashion you have to go out and seek out the best one, and unfortunately, the best one happens to be from the biggest competitor in the market, and the biggest competitor overseas. I feel like that's just kind of how it goes. You kind of have to roll with it, and Apple has never really been shy about saying like, hey, they don't technically say, hey, this is the A9 Samsung chip.
Right.
They say it's just an A9 chip.
Yeah,
but
Samsung making them.
It's just one of those things where they're like, they can get away with the fact that they know, and we know they know, and they know we know, but everyone kind of just lets it go.
Right, exactly. Okay, so PGD interestingly says that company that we talked about, Republic, is nationwide because he's in Omaha. PGD, I totally forgot you were in Omaha. So pretty cool. I guess if you're, they're nationwide. So if you're anywhere and you want a really cheap phone company, there you go. Republic, check into them, $17. So yeah, kind of cool. Thank you, PTD, as always, giving us good stuff in the chat room. Okay, so continuing on with our rumor though. So the A9 chip we talked about. Now, Force Touch is something that's rumored. I don't know if it's actually going to be there though. I'm leaning towards yes, it's going to be there, but Force Touch is one of those things. I feel like it's going to be the next Sapphire Glass. We talked about Sapphire Glass being on the iPhone for like 2 generations of the iPhone, and everyone thought it's a guarantee. The whole front of the glass is going to be Sapphire, and it never happened. Now, the Apple Watch does have Sapphire, but the iPhone does not. So I feel like Force Touch coming to the iPhone is another one of these rumors that we're going to hear about for 2 years and maybe see, maybe not. But Force Touch, as you guys know with the laptops, is the kind of however hard you push it, it can do different things. So if you press it harder, it can fast forward through a video faster. Examples of things like that. So they're saying that the entire actual front glass of the iPhone could be Force Touch. So it could have a lot of functionality for certain apps. You could have a lot more things to do with your fingers. Maybe even eliminating the home button if you pressed on a certain area for that long or whatever, however hard you pressed. I don't know. There's a lot of functionality that could be built in if you did add something like Force Touch. But again, something I'm not sure if we're going to see. Colin, would that be something we want to see or do we not want to see? Do we care right now?
I feel like right now it's a matter of, do we really care? Because one, it's just kind of coming into fruition with the new MacBooks.
Yep.
And not a lot of people are going out and buying new MacBooks. I'm sure there's an influx, especially with school coming up, where a lot of new students may have it. But for a lot of other people, I don't know how they would do that or what exactly it would matter to the phone, truthfully.
Right. No, and I'm the same thing. I don't want it yet because I don't think it's been proven yet. Yeah. So I was going to see, now I'm looking up because I don't know. Is there a Force Touch trackpad sold by Apple?
I don't think.
Yes, there is. Okay.
Oh, there is?
Oh, no. Sorry, that's just built into the computer. I don't think there's an external one.
No, I don't think so. Not yet.
I don't think so. Yeah, okay, so there's no external Force Touch trackpad, so that even leads me further to believe that we're not going to see one in the Apple iPhone. I think they're going to have something like a Force Touch external trackpad, really move this Force Touch kind of incrementally, yes, that's what I'm thinking of, on before they actually throw it into the iPhone, which is their flagship product. That's kind of their one thing. You can't really mess up an iPhone because that is your key player. That's what brings a lot of people into the Apple ecosystem. So, also, a 12 megapixel back camera. So your main camera is going to be a 12 megapixel compared to right now you have an 8 megapixel if you have the latest iPhone. And a 5 megapixel, it's what, we call kind of the selfie camera, the one on the front, the one you always FaceTime with and stuff like that, which having a 5, I think that camera is sometimes more important because you're doing things like FaceTiming, you're doing a periscope, or you're using this camera a lot more than you use the back camera. At least, most people do. And so I think having a higher end camera on the front could actually be pretty significant. And a 5 megapixel is a nice upgrade. I believe the one now is a 2 or a 3. So we'd get a nice little bump there. But 12 on the back is also very nice. But we all know with Apple, it's not about the megapixels. They've always been about the sensor, about the processing behind the camera. The megapixels on this iPhone, the iPhone 6 Plus, are far less than a lot of the other Android or Nokia phones out there, the Windows phones. But they can produce pictures that are far and beyond any other phone just because of that sensor and because of the processing. Colin, is this going to matter to a lot of people, or is it kind of one of those things of, well, unless you're blowing up your pictures really big, it doesn't really matter?
I mean, I feel like it will, but at the same time, a lot of people probably aren't going to notice the difference.
A little gimmicky is what I think.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like, oh, you got to say that number. The megapixels is what people want, you know.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's more megapixels, but a lot of people are using that front-facing camera for, like you said, just like FaceTime, Periscope, Snapchat, just random things that aren't really something that you're going to be like, oh, they must have the new camera.
Right, exactly. Okay, so and then also there's going to be 2 gigabytes of RAM. That's pretty much confirmed. I think that's guaranteed. 2 gigs of RAM, which is fantastic for gaming, those sort of high-intensive apps that everyone are starting to run on their phone. And new LTE chips that could double the speeds of your LTE. Obviously, this is always based on if your carrier supports it, which I hate those type of announcements where they announce things and then I have to wait for Sprint to kind of get with the picture. Kind of like I just talked about with Wi-Fi calling. They announced it last year. I was like, sweet, that's going to be awesome. And then, you know, it doesn't really matter for me till for another year. So, and by that time, I want the next phone, not this phone. So, all right, so those are the iPhone 6S and 6 Plus as rumors. I'm guessing we'll have a August-September announcement with an October-November release sometime around there. Not really sure. They kind of fluctuate. Depends on production. Depends on how all that is going with them. They are saying, though, that production is already starting to ramp up and that they will most likely do the August and October. August announcement, October release. So that's what I'm guessing. I'm guessing a late August announcement. All right, so that is going to do it for the news, and we are going to move into one of my favorite segments that we haven't done in a while, is the core.
Our camera's not turning on. We're making mistakes. We're fixing them as fast as we can, but we take it in the chin. That's part of what we do, and we went through the roof about this.
So the core is the segment of the show, if you guys haven't listened recently, where we rant about things that are bothering us with Apple. Sometimes we do things the opposite. Sometimes we talk about the core things that make them great. But today I have a core rant. And Colin, I'm not sure if it's something that you've even experienced, because do you use ApplePay or not? No?
It doesn't even exist on my phone.
Oh, yeah, duh. Okay. I keep bringing things up, and I know the answer to them. I just don't know why I'm asking you. But yeah, you're right. So that... oh, I don't know. Has my dock been showing? So people watching the video, my dock has been showing on Colin this entire time. Oh, there
Come on, man.
Yeah, I know. They've seen all the apps that I use. So welcome to my dock. You guys can now see the apps I use. Anyway, moving on. So my complaint is I use Apple Pay a lot. I have an American Express card as my main card, and they have been on with Apple Pay since I think day one. And so I use them a lot. And actually in Omaha, I've started to use them more and more. The more I go to Walgreens, Subway, I can't even imagine. A lot of places I've been going to just naturally have it and they don't even know it. So I've been trying it everywhere. Now, the one complaint I have though is that there's one thing that Apple will not tell you about Apple Pay, and neither will your credit card. You have to read the fine print. Now, I do admit this, I only read the fine print because I'm kind of a sucker for the rewards on credit cards. Colin knows me. He knows I'm all about the points. I'm always trying to rack up credit card points or anything like that. You know, things that will help me out to use towards a flight or things like that. I love it. I use it a lot. Now, a lot of you guys, if you have a credit card, probably know that, you know, they do the 2x points, 3x points on maybe fuel or restaurants or grocery stores, things like that. That's what my card does. Now, a lot of people don't know that if you use Apple Pay to pay for your purchase, Amex cannot tell if you should get the 2x or 3x points. So if you're using the Apple Pay and you think that you're getting double points or 3x points because you're using it at a certain place, you are not. Apple Pay cannot tell Amex that. So my problem with Apple is, number one, they didn't tell us this, and number two, you have to read the fine print, and number three, they haven't fixed it. Like, why is this an issue? Why is it not the same as me swiping my credit card? Because now there's just that much more of an incentive for me to actually get out my credit card. Now, yes, I admit this is not a big issue, and 10 points here, 20 points there is not a thing, but the transparency was kind of what bothered me. I thought Apple should kind of, when they're talking about Apple Pay, maybe tell you that, or maybe have it on their website with a fine print that, hey, by the way we transition or the way we transact with your credit card, they don't get that sort of information, so you won't be able to be helped out. I don't know. Would that sort of thing bother you, the transparency aspect? I know you don't use Apple Pay, or do you think it's not that big of an issue? It wasn't theirs to tell. Was it not their story? Was it the credit card story to tell?
I feel like I feel like that's up to the credit cards, where Apple can only make decisions so far, and I don't get why the credit cards wouldn't do that, because you're still using their credit card and they're getting your money.
Right, and the credit card still knows where you're paying with it at.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen to be a swipe.
Right, exactly. So maybe you're right. Maybe this is something where the credit card was supposed to tell me, and Apple's like, hey, we're just offering you a way to pay. So as I look through, I'm going to look through my history right now and show you, or kind of tell you guys what it looks like compared to when I used it with Apple Pay. So when I paid with Apple Pay, I just did it not too long ago. Okay, so it says Apple, instead of saying the place, so like for some of them, it'll say, the mini mart, okay? And then for this one, it says Apple Pay, Paul's Supermarket, Ozarks. And there's not as much detailed information. It still says the address, where it is, and it gives them the category. So I'm in my Amex app right now. I'm not looking through Apple, and it tells them the category. So why wouldn't they be able to tell, hey, this is a grocery store? But in the fine print, it says if you use Apple Pay, we cannot issue you your double or 3x points. Now, maybe this is just American Express thing. Maybe it's not any other company, but I know that, I read it, and my dad read it in his email. One of my friends read it in their email, and they're like, hey, because I was kind of talking to him, like, did you get that too? Do you read? And read the fine print. He's like, oh man, I didn't even notice. So just one of my little rants recently was that I'm not getting my double points or 3x points. That's a big deal to me. Big deal. Anyway, that's my rant. I'm sticking to it. All right. So now let's go into our seed section.
Can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. Can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward.
All right, so the seed, the section of the show where we talk about Apple history and what they were doing back then. So today we are heading back to 2003. In 2003, Apple was releasing a ton of new products at the Worldwide Developers Conference, which was in San Francisco that year. It included the 2.0 gigahertz Power Mac G5, which was the world's first 64-bit desktop computer. And at the time, people were saying, hey, this is the fastest desktop consumer computer that you could buy. So it's kind of a big deal. They also released the iSight camera, which was a FireWire camera at the time. Something kind of extraordinary. It was kind of one of the first kind of like these webcams that you're going to plug into your computer. And now that Apple's doing it, it's actually a thing that's going to be important. It's one of those first things. And also Safari 1.0. And so I feel like, did we talk about this already? Now that I'm saying this news, I'm like, this is very closely related to some other news. But yeah, this was back in 2003. Whether we did or whether we didn't, same time, 2003, they were releasing a lot of good products.
I think we did.
I feel like we did. Now that I'm reading it, I'm like, oh.
I'm looking at the iSight, and I'm like, that's definitely something we've spoken
That's
about.
what I read. And I was like, no, we definitely talked about that. Maybe this was different. Maybe. Well, and no, because we did. Because we talked about Safari just coming out after Microsoft pulls Internet Explorer. So that's my bad. I give you guys a piece of news, but hey, it's July news from 2003, so technically it's this month. We'll go with this month in Apple history. Man, that's a fail. That's one of the most recognizable fails I could have on this show. Excuse me, I'm gonna have some editing.
Oh, Mike just can't handle the pressure here. That's all it is.
Oh man, okay, so God.
He's folding.
How long is it?
He'll get it together. He slowly. Take a sip of something. Like, good Lord.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, there we go. Maybe we're back. Maybe we're not. You might have to take over the show. I feel like I'm dying. So,
I'm
anyway,
going to take this in a whole direction.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh no, we're back. We're good. This is good. PGD says, yeah, this sounds familiar. I was like, yeah, we gave that news. Sorry, PGD. We'll come back with 2 pieces of news next week just to make up for this little blunder we had. All right, so that was the seed segment. Now we are moving into the tips of the week. So our tip of the week is kind of some spring cleaning that you should probably be doing more than just in the spring. You should be doing it year round. But let's actually play our little intro here.
It's the picks of the week, baby.
That's right, the tips and picks of the week. So like I said, something that we should be doing every once in a while. So Colin, cleaning up the phone is something you have actually taught me to do because you do it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you go for this one.
Yeah. So the big thing about cleaning up your phone is there are so many apps throughout the year, weeks, months, whatever it may be. We'll see it online. We'll download it, think we're going to use it for 2 weeks, and then push it into one of our folders. Unfortunately, apps like iBooks, Find My Friends, and podcasts and little things like that. I mean, I'm not going to talk down to the podcast app now, but things like that you can't get rid of, but the things that you can get rid of that you don't use and that you tell yourself like maybe I will use it, just delete it.
That's my key. Is I always convince myself that I will use this app.
Yeah.
So you got to get over that hump of like, okay, and you had a good one. Like you're like, okay, if you haven't used this app in like X number of days, it should go in the trash. Like it should be deleted.
Like every now and then, it's just I'll kind of be sitting there and I'll look through a folder, especially with games. Games is my big one.
Yeah.
Where I'll look at it, I'm like, do I play this? Do I actually enjoy it? And I remember the fact that, hey, if I do want to play this, I can just go download it
Go
again.
get it again. Exactly.
Yeah.
My big one though, I have a whole entire 2-paged folder of food apps because I like ordering food from apps, but they're apps that maybe I use once a month, if that. If once a month. Probably some of them, like I have a ton of pizza apps. I have just things that I don't need and cruft. So there's multiple reasons for going through and deleting a lot of these apps. And apps is the first thing we're going to kind of go through and talk about. So deleting these apps, obviously they take up space. Now, some of these don't take up too much space, but they do take up space. So you're going to get some space back. Number 2 is you're going to get a lot less notifications that you just ignore all the time. How many of you guys get the notification from that random game you haven't played? And it's just nice to not get those anymore. So you get less notifications. And number 3, because you're getting less notifications, because there's less background app usage going on, you're going to save a lot of battery by deleting a lot of these apps. A lot of these apps, believe it or not, are connecting to the network every once in a while. That's how they're giving you these push notifications. And so they are using up some of that battery. So going through and deleting the apps, there's a lot of good things that come out of doing that. So Colin, what should we say? Maybe 30 days. If you haven't used an app in 30 days, is that kind of a good cutoff time or is that too short?
No, that's probably good. I was thinking that might be too long.
Oh, really?
Almost.
Yeah, you might be right.
I mean, I would give it, if you use an app every day and then you kind of like forget about it for a week or two, but then get back to it, no, you don't need to get rid of that one. But if you're using an app for like 2 weeks and then you're just like, I don't really like this anymore, but I'll just put it to the side. Get rid of it as soon as you start thinking that. Because
Right.
as you're talking about like push notifications, I think to myself, I only use Bleacher Report for the push notification.
Oh, really? You don't know? You just like seeing the headline?
Yep, I get the headline and I'm like, cool. Like,
That's about what I do with the Wall Street Journal, actually. I didn't think about it until you just said that, but yeah, I kind of like in the notification, and that's about it. I don't really open the app.
I rarely click into that app, and when I do, it's usually an accident.
Right. Yeah, that's about me too.
Which
So
is kind of funny that as you're saying that, I'm like telling like, oh, delete these apps if you don't use them. I have an open Bleacher Report.
You and I are both looking at my phone. They're like, okay, it's time to spring clean right now as we're doing this. Okay, so second thing to go in and spring clean, the thing that takes up the most space on your phone, hands down, are pictures and videos. And I guarantee you there are a ton that you don't care about and that you can go through and delete. Now, this one is tedious. I only do this once a year. I guarantee I only do it once a year. But I will go through and I will delete all the random screenshots I took, all the memes that I saved offline to send to a friend. Just go through and delete all that stuff. And especially those random videos that you took at the time. You're like, that's not significant. I'm never going to use that again. Go through and delete those. It's a good time. Now, those two are pretty obvious, apps and photos, going through, cleaning those up. But there are a few things that you can go and clean up without actually deleting anything. And it's just what we talked about earlier, push notifications and background app usage. Both of these are in your settings. So if you go into settings, general, you have a background app refresh section. Now, I would go through here because a lot of these just get turned on by default. You're clicking through when you install an app and they're just on. But a lot of apps, you don't need to be accessing the network when you're not using them, because a lot of them you're honestly probably not using anyway. So go into that background app refresh and just make sure the only ones that should be on are ones that you actually want. What background app refresh is you want them in the background to be connecting the network and be updated when you switch back to them after not using them for a little bit. So things like GPS are a good thing to have on background app refresh. So if you're driving, and you quit out of the app and you still need the navigation, it can still be giving you notification while you are driving. It can still use that GPS signal. Things like that. Good things to have background app refresh on. But really, everything else you can probably turn off. Now, I can leave my podcast one on because I want that in the background to be downloading the latest versions. I don't have to open the app to do it. Things like that are good to keep on. But you can probably turn off about 95% of those. So the second one then, of course, is the notifications. So heading down to Now I'm going to lose it. In your notifications, it's actually right on the front. It's not in general. Back out notifications. Go in and check all those because those also take up network. When you're getting push notifications, they're pulling that from the network. Something you can just turn off to save you peace of mind, save you less notifications, and a little bit more on the battery life. So that's kind of our spring cleaning tip is go in and do it, but don't just do it in the spring. Do it once a month. I would say right around the start of the month, just go through and delete them. Or as you're doing it, as you're sitting there just using your phone, just delete apps that you don't use. But yeah, do it on a monthly basis and you'll be a lot happier with your phone usage. You won't be as annoyed with your phone for a lot of reasons.
Yes.
All right. So there is a pick of the week that I have. Now, for some of you, this isn't going to be interesting, but for some of you, it might be just what you're looking for. If you are a social media kind of junkie, especially a Twitter or Instagram junkie, that's actually the only two you can use this app for, and you're looking to get some new followers, maybe you do a podcast like I do. Maybe you do something, maybe you write, you blog, you do something where you want more followers that like your content. There's an app called Crowdfire. Now, Crowdfire started out, I think it was just Unfollow Me, or the name changed within the last year. I actually went back to use it when I launched my new podcast, and I couldn't find it. So now it is called Crowdfire, all one word. What Crowdfire allows you to do is it allows you to mass unfollow people who are not following you. So let's say when you first set up your Twitter account, you followed a bunch of people to try and get new followers, and none of them followed you back. You can actually go through there and just keep tapping away at people who don't follow you back. It's kind of nice. It kind of cleans up your Twitter feed a little bit. But the feature that I like the most is the copy followers feature. So let's say that you know of someone kind of like you, another blogger. I'm just going to use a blogger. It's a perfect example. If you're a blogger and you know of another blogger that blogs about your same content, and you think he's got a lot of really good followers, you can type his Twitter handle in there, and you can go and start following the people that follow him. It's a very tailored way. It's not just mass following. What I don't like about a lot of other apps are that you just get a bunch of followers. A bunch of followers doesn't mean anything. What you want is you want followers that actually care about the stuff that you're doing. So now, obviously, when I do this, so if I were to copy followers from some other really popular podcaster, maybe I follow 500. Now, those people get the notification that you followed them, and they kind of check out your profile, and they might follow you back. You might get 50 to 100 for maybe every 500 you follow. But still, if you're trying to grow your Twitter base or your Instagram base, it's actually a really, really handy app. Now, Colin, some people have a stigma on these apps that it's a very kind of shady way to gain followers. But I don't really think so, because gaining followers in the mass ocean of Twitter is actually pretty difficult. And you're not really, you're not buying followers. I think buying followers is pretty shady, but I think this is an honest way. You're following some people, and then they're going to follow you back if they like your content. Is that natural or not?
That's how Twitter, Facebook, and anything else work, is that if you're following the right people are following you. And it's like if they happen to share your content, someone may follow you some other way. It's
exactly.
Like that's how social media was meant to work. I don't see it, as you were explaining that and saying that it might be kind of backwards. It was just, that's how it used to be. I feel like it's backwards now when people are like, follow me back.
Right. I agree. I think this is actually, like you just said, more of the natural way to gain followers.
Yeah.
You're not stealing them, and people are only going to follow you if they like your content. It's pretty natural. And
at any
you're
time
building
they
your
can
feed
leave.
of stuff that you actually like. You're building your feed of people who like podcasting or blogging, any sort of thing like that. So it's a free app. I paid for $5 a year, which is nothing. You just pay $5 a year. You get unlimited follows and unfollows in a certain day. Otherwise, I think you're capped at 100 or 200. So Twitter obviously caps you at about 1,000 a day, but you can remove the 100 cap from the app if you pay $5 a year. So not too bad. Otherwise, you can go and use it for free and try it and see. It's a great way to grow your Twitter base, especially if you do something like creating content and you want some other people to follow you. So I know in the chat room we have some other podcasters, so it's a great app. I would go and check it out, use it. It's Crowdfire. It's also on the desktop. I honestly find it's a better experience on the iPhone. You can go to the website and you can do it online. I think that iPhone app is a lot better, but it's free to download. So you podcasters out there that are listening to this or bloggers, go out and check it out. It's called Crowdfire and it's free. So give it a shot. That is my pick of the week. So that is going to just about do it for the show. I want to say thank you to Colin for being here again this week. It was a good show. We covered a lot of news, which was kind of fun. A lot of little but significant stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they seem small, but over time they're gonna play a big role. So.
Yeah, those are the kind of news stories we like. So, again, this show is part of the 2980 Network, 2980network.com. Head over there. Open Mic Night is over there, and also my new show, Suit and Scrubs. If you're looking for a comedy relationship podcast, we released episode 1 last week. We're releasing episode 2 this week. Kind of fun. Me and my wife just talking about our funny life as a couple, and we do have some comical moments in there. So hopefully you guys can go and check all that out. But again, 2980network.com. If you guys are interested in starting a podcast, if you guys have an idea for a podcast you want to start and you want to do it for free, feel free to contact with me and we can talk about maybe adding you to the network. I do have some pretty strict standards, but if I think it's a good idea and we hit it off, maybe you can host, I will host your podcast on my network for free. So kind of a nice little deal there. A little give and take. You put your content on my website, but I actually host it and pay for all the hosting and everything like that. So just going to throw that out there for you guys. Another big thank you to Roger at WOMN Radio. And of course, if you guys want to support the show, just like Peter did last week, a big thank you to him. We, over at Patreon, patreon.com/OMN podcast, and Patreon is patreon.com/OMN podcast. You can head over there. That is going, okay. PTD, I promised you in the chat last week that I would talk about the ApplePay and Square deal. We are going to cover that next week. We are going to cover it next week because I had a lot of news in here, and I thought that would be a good one for next week because I don't think there's going to be a lot of good news this week. So I'm saving it, but you did put it in the chat, so I will talk about it next week. I promise this time. You have my word. The ApplePay and Square deal. And so that is going to do it for this week's show. We will see you guys next week, but until we do, tech on.